You train for the threats you can see, but what about the ones you can't? United Diagnostic Services brings hospital-grade diagnostic technology directly to first responder agencies, making early detection of cardiovascular disease and cancer more accessible than ever. UDS provides comprehensive early detection programs using advanced ultrasound, CT calcium scoring, stress echoes, and innovative blood panels to identify potential health risks long before symptoms appear. It's proactive, on-site, and built specifically for those who serve. Early detection saves lives and careers. Learn more at udshealth.com.
From interviews to jail calls, Ditto Transcripts delivers fast, confidential, and court-ready transcription for law enforcement agencies. Ditto is CJIS compliant and is already working with agencies all over the U.S., including the Washington State Patrol and the National Park Service Investigations Unit. Get started now at dittotranscripts.com. That's dittotranscripts.com. To hear details about all the applications of Ditto Transcripts and exactly why this is a key solution for your organization's workload issues, check out episode 232. The views and opinions expressed by the host and guests of this show do not represent their employing agency, department, or organization. All information should be regarded as anecdotal, contextual, and educational, and should not be misinterpreted as legal or medical advice. Welcome to Blue Grit Radio, the podcast that explores making better cops for a better community. I'm your host, Eric Tung. I've been an active police officer since 2007. We will dive into the aspects of police culture, health and wellness, leadership, and mindset. You'll hear from experts not only from policing, but all industries as they relate to being our best with purpose, passion, and positivity. Join me as we share stories, lessons, and advice so we can all be better for ourselves, our teams, our families, and our communities.
Welcome, everyone. Today we have a book review and a topic summary. So I'm excited to feature this. I'm not the biggest history buff. However, I've been increasingly intrigued about history. And I will say I'm probably not the biggest history buff when it comes to American history. I'm quite familiar, I think, beyond what we learn in grade school and such. But I'm excited to feature this because he's an absolutely iconic leader. And it's really hard to dispute his efficacy when you look back in history, even beyond American history. So that leader is none other than Honest Abe Lincoln. And so today's book feature is Lincoln on Leadership. This is Executive Strategies for Tough Times, written by Donald T. Phillips. So beyond the obvious of a president, an iconic president that navigated the nation and these I feel like whatever I say is going to be underrepresentative of what he was faced with. But the most volatile time, you could argue, despite people thinking that things are increasingly more volatile these days, I mean, the nation was at war with itself. It is our only true civil war in history. And he's trying to navigate it all, right? He's trying to lead the Union and go through and navigate through the Civil War. You don't need me to tell you about the social and political struggles of the day, to include slavery. But he is looked back on as being extremely effective, right? And so this book ties in these main concepts. I believe there's 12. I have some notes here. But these main concepts that Lincoln did very well, and he did that he incorporated into his style and his philosophy that we can all learn from. And so like any leadership book, it's not geared towards political leadership or governmental military leadership. It's for leaders of all levels, leaders of all industries. And so I appreciate that. And I'm excited to share these points with you because there are huge takeaways and translations for our organizations, whether you're in first responder, emergency response, public safety, or not. So Phillips has a lot of in-depth information, specific anecdotes of challenges or working with difficult people, or you should say difficult, just working with different people in Lincoln's history, trying to navigate different diplomatic issues, get people on board, what have you. He does have these points that I felt were very illustrative, even in sharing what the overall concept was. And so that's what we're doing today. What summarizes Lincoln's success is being really consistent in values, very flexible in his tactics and strategies used, right? So this is someone that, as the myth infers, Honest Abe, someone known of high integrity and values. That's why we really need to visit our own values and speak them into existence, write them into existence, and let our actions speak louder than our words. However, also very flexible. We think of about a lot of strong, quote unquote, strong leaders that from surface level may appear inflexible, right? They might feel and seem like an authoritarian. That might be a strong personality, but it's my way or the highway. And it would be really interesting to think about how that would have gone in those circumstances, going through a civil war. And so when we think about strong leaders, quote unquote strong leaders, I think a lot of people might think about this unwavering philosophy or style, which Lincoln, as illustrated, was quite different from that. So I'm just going to jump into it. The first concept that he shares is to get out of the office, circulate amongst the troops. And for those higher in rank, they'll recognize that's challenging. However, we do see a lot of people do it well. We see and we hear about upper admin and brass that they they make an effort to show up at trainings. They make an effort to go into the briefing room. They make an effort to drive around, maybe show up at a call, and not in this spy way, but in this relevance way. But even in different contexts, I think it's really helpful to recognize that when people have a true open door policy and when people do make conversation in the lunchroom, in the hallways, and that kind of thing, it does go a long way, right? We already know that the higher you promote, the more literally removed you are, not just from the day to day type of work, but from the interactions and the context. And so to be effective and relevant, we need to make sure that we're watering those relationships and creating those touch points. And so I believe this was a very similar prong shared by Admiral McRaven, I believe, Wisdom of the Bullfrog, if I'm not conflating the authors and titles, but it was essentially to go around and rub shoulders with the people that you are in command of. So your context does matter, being tied in with lower quote unquote lower ranks, right? People closer to the ground. You need to know what their perspectives are. You need to know what their challenges are. And you need to know what they believe is part of the solution so you can add to that solution and be effective. Number two, never act out of anger or spite. So I love this because there's historical accounts that he shares of how Lincoln would write these long letters, just fire and anger and everything wrong with the person that he's frustrated with, and then he would file them away and put them in his desk drawer. Right? It's the back then equivalent of writing an angry email and then deleting it or just getting rid of it, not sending it, which there's a lot of power in recognizing and venting and not clicking send, or some might say not writing the email while you're mad, right? Go stew on it, go vent to a friend, go hit up peer support, go work out, do something constructive, but definitely don't write and send that angry email. And a pro tip for the moment, I would say if you feel like some need to write it down, maybe don't write it in email. Maybe, put it in a Word doc or, you know, dictate into your phone like a note so it's not going to accidentally auto send or accidentally hotkey send to somebody. So leave that address line blank as you're venting and or don't put an email anyway. So that tip's for free. Number three, persuade rather than coerce. So persuade. Okay, so he's known to be a diplomat. He's known to try to connect with both sides. I think that's a lot of his legacy in being an effective leader and leading these extreme different polar views and perspectives and people. And so we know what coercion looks like. And think about it. If somebody comes at you hot and they tell you, hey, this is the way it's going to be, you need to get on board with this thing. Okay, that's part of some rank structure that's going to happen. But I'm talking about like belief systems. Like when has anyone ever forced you and succeeded in helping you see their perspective and believe something? It doesn't happen. If anything, you get more defensive. I mean, that's just human nature. And so the gift of gab and the persuasion, right? That makes me think of effective communication. That makes me think of true listening and collaborating, trying to allow someone to share their perspective and then allowing them to hear your perspective. I mean, that's just professional discourse. So, really, it goes into coercion and authority. It might get you compliance and obedience, but it doesn't get you collaboration. It doesn't get you trust and teamwork, which is, if you're listening to this, that's really what you're in for. You're looking for that true values focused leadership that engages the team, doesn't subject them, right? It doesn't subjugate them. Number 4 is be a master of paradox. This one was interesting for me. Master of paradox, highly consistent yet highly flexible. Okay, so that's kind of the beginning, what we threw out, which was that he was a person of highly consistent values, but he was flexible in his approach. So they underline, or the author, Phillips, underlines how he didn't compromise on his core principles while preserving the Union, holding it all together in the end, and ending slavery. But he was very flexible on his tactics, right? How he communicated, his timing, who he worked with. Some examples: he fired people that weren't delivering, so he held standards. He delayed the Emancipation Proclamation because although he wanted to do it and the accounts were that he wanted to do it, he recognized, or he perceived, that the timing could throw things off as far as holding things together. Some people would definitely have an issue with that, or an issue with the principle of that. However, I think it is fair to look at the whole context and what you're trying to achieve. So I think that it's a relevant takeaway for us, because a lot of people, whether it's relationships or whether it's goals and projects, we say timing is everything, right? So what it makes me think of is being mindful of the environment and not just trying to shove a square peg through a round hole. Sometimes we need to recognize that the times may shift and you're potentially going to get access to a round peg later down the line, and it will help you accomplish the goal to make things whole. So we can't just be rigid and survive. We have to adapt, right? We have to play to the environment. We have to recognize the concept. And that's something that we talk a lot about on this show. Number 5, lead by being led. I love this because it is recognizing that the leader is not a true leader. An effective leader is not like a authoritarian. By being led, it means that you're able to have a conversation. It means that you're asking for feedback. It means that you want the input. You want consent. It's kind of like we're not just trying to subject ourselves to this like Leviathan, to draw on, Thomas Hobbes, but it is to say that no, we want willing participants, right? We want followers that want to be here. They're following along because they're bought in, because they're valued, because uh, they're a collaborative team member, not just because they're being told to do so, not just because they have to. And that goes back to that persuasion versus coercion. So he sought consent of his followers to lead them. So he didn't demand loyalty; he earned it. And I think that's a huge thing that resonates with all of us. Number 6, when you extinguish hope, you create desperation. We got to keep hope, right? We got to keep the faith. And this job is hard. We talk about that a lot. We talk about the hard things, but we have to remember our why. We have to remember to stay positive, and I like to say as positive as practical, because we don't want just overt toxic positivity. We want to be real about it. But if we're being real and objective about it, we know why we signed up, and we know that it's not a fruitless endeavor, even though it feels like there's revolving doors of systems and efforts. We know that our work matters. So when you think about things, when you think about how you lead and how you model, people are watching, right? Everyone of a lower rank is watching. And frankly, everyone's watching everyone anyway. And everybody is a contributing piece of your team or your organizational culture. You have a vote. And so the more influential you are, rather, whether it's of rank or not of rank, then the more of a vote, the more clout, the more influence you have in affecting the total landscape of that culture and morale. So if you are influential, whether you're an officer or a chief, then your actions, your words, your attitude absolutely matters. It's going to set a tone and it's going to bring people along, right? So if you can stay constructive and positive, it matters. If you don't, if the outlook is bleak and that's something that you wear on your sleeve, I'm not saying fake it, I'm saying find it, like make it real. But if you're negative, you're going to make everyone around you negative. And the louder you are, the more influential you are, that's absolutely a thing. even if you're not overtly whining and, you know, moaning about everything all the time and venting about everything all the time, they're going to sense it. Like people know, right? So stay hopeful, stay positive. Number 7, I like this one. Take public opinion baths, but don't drown in them. What is a public opinion bath? It's for me, it's mingling with the people you supervise and the people you work with and allowing, inviting, and accepting their real talk. No matter how frustrated it sounds, no matter how annoyed they are, it's hear them out. Like know where they're at, know what they're thinking and feeling. Because again, like if you don't know, then how are you going to effectively lead them? And those closer to the ground problems, those like the people with boots on the ground, they know it, right? So we need to trust that. I'm not saying make all your decisions off of it. We are all links of a chain or pieces of a puzzle that we got to put together with every link of the chain, combining your inputs to come up with a cohesive, relevant strategy that's going to be effective. However, you got to hear it. And for better or for worse, I know sometimes I've taken on too much of it, and maybe that's the drowning part of it, especially with my background in peer support. Like I've definitely let morale and culture affect me in a really not constructive way. I'm not saying be cold. I'm saying like I took it on a bit too much. I didn't have good boundaries at different times in my career with my personal life and what I would be spending all of my limited quality time with my wife or fiance or girlfriend, whatever she was at different phases in life. I definitely let that, and sometimes I still let it permeate this barrier, this threshold that should be like my home life. And so that's my personal share of why I think both ends of this feedback prong, number 7, are so valuable, right? You got to know and invite the critique and the real talk from your people. However, don't drown in it, because I feel times when I dabbled in that drowning and I let it tank my resolve or let it put me in a negative space beyond the profession, beyond the work I'm trying to do, really letting it carry into my, home and personal life. Number 8, if your commanders in the field can't be successful, neither can you. Again, that's all about the team, right? So it's all about giving people the resources, authority, and support to succeed.
This episode is sponsored by Hero Schedule. If your department needs better scheduling software that isn't outdated, clunky, and expensive, Hero Schedule is an easy switch, and they give you a free 30-day trial. Get started at heroschedule.com and click on Try Hero Schedule.
For me, this reminds me of David Marquet. So the turn this ship around or turn the ship around, but really the idea that you want to delegate responsibility and decision making to the lowest point possible, right? We want to cut out redundancy. We don't want to be micromanaging control freaks. So if an officer can make a decision, let them make the decision, right? It's very different if you have an expectation in a culture where you want the officer to inform you and advise what they intend to do and what they ought to do versus asking for permission, versus sharing 3 or 4 options and waiting for you to assess, get all this information regurgitated rather than them being right in front of it and saying, hey, I got this, I'm intending to do this. Or for different circumstances, just do the thing because we trust you to do it. We give you the training and the discretion to do it. And so trying to distill that down to the appropriate level. It doesn't mean reduce ownership and don't own your problems and delegate them away. No, it just means find the appropriate level. Give them the resources, like give them what they need to succeed. Their success is your success. And this might sound like a silly one to share, obviously, or maybe not so obviously. Team success is interlinked. Sometimes it doesn't quite feel that way when you hear about certain organizations and gripes and how someone's supervisor literally is not listening to anything that their team is telling them. Number 9, compromise does not mean cowardice. Okay, so what does that mean? Lincoln was known for compromising constantly, like all the time. So we talked about timing earlier, personnel. There's examples where there's some guy that he did not like. He did not see eye to eye with him. However, he saw them as a very capable person. I believe that there were, politics and kind of alliances involved with that. And I don't know if this will come up again, but offhand, there was even a guy that he he relayed this in a letter. He's basically like, "Hey man, like you're not my first choice. I don't think you'd be my second choice. You're not really my dude. I know that we disagree on a lot of stuff, but you are highly capable. You are highly proficient, and so I believe in you, and I still appreciate what you're doing. I think you can do it. Some people are telling me you can't or you're not going to. You're going to sabotage me, but I'm putting my trust in you. I'm taking a chance." It's hard to think about somebody being that direct, but man, you think about how someone would respect that. Just to call it out, say, "Hey, I know that you're not on Team Abe, and I fear you might sabotage me, or people maybe are in my ear saying that, but I'm hoping you don't, and I know you're super capable to carry the mission." And it worked out. So compromise, right? Be flexible. It doesn't mean you're weak. When I hear cowardice of tucking your tail, it means being effective. So it makes me think of something I think about often, and sometimes I share, which is whether you want to be right or effective. And we know, I think it might be clear for some in relationship talk that might really resonate. Do you want to be right or you want to be effective? Do you want to be correct in this dispute with your loved one? Or do you want to be effective in the team and the partnership that you're building? So, what is the goal? Is it move the needle in this direction, or is it to be right? Because we can be right and we can be alone, and you can take that however you want. You can make that relationship or you can make that team and at work, but ultimately we need the team to accomplish things. We can't do everything by ourselves. It is a team sport. Number 10, avoid major conflict in the form of quarrels and arguments. You don't have time for it. All right, so this kind of reminds me of the you know persuade, don't coerce, because then it makes me think of people that just debate. And I think about people that they appear to debate for sport, like they argue to argue. You can think about that in social media. I mean, everyone and their mom has people that, and they engage on social media, X and whatever, and they're just like, it's almost like they can't not. And who do you know that's actually convinced anyone out of anything like that, right? These people are diametrically opposed in this opinion on this thing, and yet they just keep chipping back and back and back and forth. So let's not do that because it doesn't accomplish anything. It distracts from the mission. It certainly doesn't advance it. And there's a lot of examples, and people can probably think of types of applications where it actually makes things worse, right? Because it makes people defensive, it makes people dig their heels in, and definitely distracting. So in context of our job or most jobs, like you're gonna get heat for making decisions. You're not gonna make everyone happy. I think I learned that slower than I should have, but I think there's a part of me as a young supervisor, I wanted to be a pleaser, and you just can't, right? Like, especially if you're going to lead by your values, it's not always going to make someone happy. You might have similar values, a lot of us do, but the application and what that looks like when it's actualized in reality, in context and perspective, looks different. We might be doing this for justice, or we might be doing this for integrity, but that might look different. You're not going to make everyone happy. So not every criticism needs a response. That there might be a takeaway to public information officer, kind of social media tip there. You see some agencies respond to everything, and I'm not saying one way or the other, but you see some other that are like, yeah, I'm not going to waste my time on engaging with trolls. And so it's just worth thinking about in whatever context you're in. Some battles aren't worth fighting because you're literally not going to gain anything from it. And you are going to lose your time, and you'll probably lose your patience. You'll probably get really frustrated, as we often do. Number 11, do not surrender the game, leaving any available card unplayed. Right. So this is a nod to persistence, like keep going, use every tool. Lincoln's standard when things look really dismal was to explore options and try different things. I think that this is extremely relevant for us because we know we have to contingency plan. And even when you do a lot of planning, once you get out on the field, you get out on the call or, the op, I've heard so many times from SWAT operators where it's immediately like their 3 or 4 plans, like none of them pan out because something happens or the circumstance was just different. You might want to take the guy down in one of these 3 spots, but something changes and like, shoot, we got to go now. And we don't have everyone. We just have what we have. So you got to roll with it. but also recognize all the options. So you don't quit just because it's hard. As always, you got to adapt and overcome. And I know that that's something that we think about a lot and is very personal to us. So those are the concepts. Essentially, there's a couple things that I want to highlight in this book as well, which is which are kind of just overarching leadership takeaways or philosophical takeaways. One of them was that leaders tend to choose people in their own image. So if you have an aggressive top leader, that's going to have an effect, right? They may be promoting and selecting people that are similar to them. And so we think about the impact of leadership, and I know we talk about it a lot, leadership at all levels, but the leadership at the top, as this book explains, really does signal a lot. Whatever your organization looks like, whoever is the top dog does have an effect on the rest of the leadership culture. Everything you say as a leader is intently heard. And isn't that the truth? I mean, how many times, whether it's a CEO or a politician or a chief or whoever, when something is said and it might not be the most fair context, but it doesn't matter. It's said and it's repeated and it's requoted. It might be misquoted. And so just be mindful of that. As we elevate and rank, we have a responsibility to be mindful of what we're saying and what we're doing. Another prong, you can fool some of the people all the time, all the people some of the time, but you can't fool all the people all the time. And man, isn't it an archetype that politicians seem to try to do so? And I think this really goes to not making everyone happy, right? You have to do you by your virtue and values, and you have to be good with it. I think that's a coming of age slash like progressing through life lesson that I'm continuing to work on, which is you can't make everyone happy, and you got to do your best. And sometimes and really all the time, like your best has to be good enough. A lot of times you don't get that feedback. And I feel that I think the longer I do this job or run through life, like you don't get pats on the back. And I think that might be really relevant for millennials and after, because before the archetype or anecdotes were that no news is good news. So if you don't hear anything from the bosses or from the sarge, that means you're doing a good job. We know that to be different with younger generations. However, I do think that there's a piece of empowerment for younger workforce just to say, yes, you know what's important to you, and yes, you can seek feedback. However, don't rely on other people to tell you you're doing a good job, and don't rely on external validation to know you're doing a good job and know where your effort and intention is going. And perhaps maybe that's my spin on it. Never crush a man out, thereby making him and his friends permanent enemies. And I think that this is just it's a nod to kindness, it's a nod to empathy. A lot of times we don't choose our coworkers, and allowing people to save face and give grace. I think that that's some of my big takeaways there. There's a literal strategic reason because these might be your remaining coworkers, and you can't fire people or whatever. And for me, I think that makes sense. However, I think that there's just a human spirit and kind of an intent thing of, allowing some grace because everyone's human and there is perspective, as I nodded to earlier. So even if you outwardly completely disagree, and even if someone just really gums something up, recognize we make mistakes. There are absolutely things that need to happen and things and actions that need the appropriate accountability, whatever that looks like, whether it's a violation, overt or subtle or significant, what have you. I'm not saying give an excuse, but when he says never crush a man out, I think that that image speaks for itself, where you're not totally discarding a person for something that doesn't measure up to that. And in more clear terms, he talks about like aggressive leaders choosing employees like themselves or any leaders. Your organization will take on the personality of its top leader. So he does say that overtly. So if you are toxic, you're probably not listening. But if a top boss is toxic, it's going to have an effect on the organization, right? Everyone's going to get a little toxic, or the place will get toxic, and that makes sense, right? Based on decisions and actions. But if you are cynical and you are a lieutenant or a sergeant, lo and behold, your crew, your teams may take on some cynicism. If you are pragmatic and balanced and you try to be non-emotional about the changes that are coming or the bad news, then other people may take a note from that. I think that the biggest takeaway for that is know your circle of control, right? Know that you can control you. You cannot control the people that work on your team, but you absolutely can and will influence them. And how much is probably up to them, right? That's in their circle of control. So ultimately, I highly recommend this book. If you are a total history buff, it's worth looking at. There's different battles and letters and accounts that were analyzed to derive these prongs. However, even for the main points, if you're more of a skimmer, I didn't read every little anecdote and story, but I really did enjoy the points in drawing up some of those examples. So if you're more of like a book skimmer, I do recommend it for that too. I really love the points and how they're illustrated. So I was excited to take notes and share this all with you. As always, if this was helpful, please share this out. Send it to one person, send it to 10. Social media, awesome. That's all super helpful in helping the show grow. And if you could do me a huge favor, please go on Apple or Spotify, give a 5-star rating, write a review if you're on Apple. I think it's easiest just to do on the app. Even helpful if this show helps you, just go on the Apple podcast app and find Blue Grit Radio. Go down to reviews and there's a place where you can click, give it a review and give me some kind words. And as always, send me a message if you have ideas, Q&A, things you want to hear more about, or let me know what helped you. All right, everyone take care, stay safe, stay gritty.
Thank you for tuning into another episode of Blue Grit Radio. As always, support this community by subscribing, giving us a 5-star review, and following, liking, and sharing posts on Blue Grit Wellness on Instagram. You can reach me there or email me at bluegritwellness@gmail.com. Be well and stay gritty.